welcome back to the studio. In my last video, I alluded to a quilt top that I had been working on. It was actually a combination of people that had been working on it, actually. And I will say that this is the second time I'm recording this introduction because the first time the volume didn't record. So um, I think the first one was better. I think the first one would have been better. Um, the whole story of the process was this. Way back before I even started quilting, my mom and my sister and I used to go to a craft show that was always held in the fall. It was like the Harvest Festival at a big fairground in Florida. And it was a funny thing because in the beginning, well, in the morning time, they always had like a VIP access, and I don't. It seemed to think that you had to pay like $100 or something. It was expensive to get that VIP access, but you got to go in like an hour or an hour and a half early, 2 hours early, and those people always got in and bought up all the good stuff, and we would sit outside jealous while watching them all leave with all these really wonderful things. But when we got inside, we all kind of went about our way and looking for our own things. My mom and my sister always had very similar taste, uh, but I always had my own thing I was looking for. But I remember walking through the show and I saw a quilt, and it was just a wahine. It was maybe this wide, this long, and it was a modified angel quilt, and it was sort of like a primitive red wagon kind of look. In fact, I think it was a red wagon pattern. Um, it was a heart, and the curve of the heart was the wings. It had a circle for the head, and then it had a little halo, and that was it for the angel. And the version that I saw was on a variety of really soft gray background plaids, and then the hearts were red, and the halo was gold, and then the had sashing and border. But I remember at the time. Now, keep in mind, this was probably 1985. Um, the quilt was like $150, and I was not a quilter, and I thought, oh my gosh, that's a lot. I don't have that much money. I think I could make that myself. If I knew how to quilt, I could do that. So I just kept that quilt in the back of my mind because, you know, many of you know me that I like angels. So as time went on, my mom and I started taking quilting classes. This is my mom back in her glamour days. I have no idea when this was taken. It says Friday, April 1952. That was years before I was born. Um, so around 1991, my mom and I started taking quilting classes. And after I finished my beginning quilting classes, then I was allowed to take other classes, but you had to have beginning quilting first. And one of the first classes that I took after that was applique. And my applique class was taught by Bernice. And Bernice was a very interesting woman. She was from Chicago, and her parents owned a bar, and they lived up above the bar. So while she was a very elegant woman when I met her, she could also have language like a salty sailor if the situation arose. And that was from years of living above the bar. And, obviously she worked in the bar as time went on. So I ended up taking the Hearts class multiple times, not because I was a bad student, but because I just enjoyed her presence. But basically, um, the reason that the heart was so good for applique learning is you have the straight line, you have a curve, you have an outer point, and you have an inner point. So this one simple shape has a lot of the components that we need when we're doing applique. Of course, you go later on, you go on to learn how to do stems and other things. Now, you won't be able to tell from the front, but if you see the back, you can see that the applique fabric is here. So that would show you that this is a reverse applique. This is just plain muslin on the back, which so you can see that that's a backing. That's the difference between these two. But I took this class over and over from her, but I also took other applique classes as time went on, just because I enjoyed her company. She also always taught at night for some reason, and I always kind of felt like her security guard uh, because the shop was always, the place was in a shopping strip mall. It was kind of dark. Anyway, um, so I took many classes from her, and we spent, I enjoyed spending time with her. But she loved making the hearts. So I can't even fathom in all the years that she was quilting how many heart appliques she made. Um, she would come in, and if a new fabric line came in, she would buy a little piece of the whole collection, and she would make hearts with it. And sometimes she would send a whole packet of hearts to her cousin Annie, I believe was the name, and her cousin would make up a quilt from them, and then do something with the quilt. Um, but she was always making hearts. So when she had passed away, her husband was just disposing of everything. And so I went over and begged and cried and pleaded. And they ended up letting me take stuff. And I mean, he was literally throwing them in the garbage. So I ended up with a lot of these things in progress. Now, they weren't all hearts. Some of them were Baltimore album blocks and other things. But I ended up with several hundred different types of heart appliques, and I gave them away in collections to different people at the shop at the time. I know one of the teachers at the shop, every time she had a baby quilt that she needed to make, she'd ask me if I had more hearts, and then she'd just put those together and make a quilt out of it. But I still recently ended up, I still had, pieces in the collection. And now that I'm, getting ready to move the studio, I've been going through stuff and trying to eliminate anything that I could let go of. And so I took one of the bundles of hearts, and this particular bundle was looked like vintage Hoffman Christmas fabrics, and it was on a creamy beige, looked to me like an Oriental background. Um, and I also had that background in my collection somewhere. I wouldn't be surprised if Bernice and I bought it at the same time, to be honest, because I could have been with her that night when we were shopping. But so I took that bundle and I gave it to my quilting buddy now, Marguerite. I asked her if she wanted to make something with it, and she said she would. So she said she would like to make something, but she needed more of the background fabric to expand the quilt. She didn't want to make something limited by the size of the hearts. So I went ahead and gave her my background fabric. And when she finished, oh my gosh, it was beautiful. It had two different color stars in the background. Of course, it had the light background from the background of the hearts, and it had hearts in the border. It was really spectacular. And then she presented it back to me, and she said she wanted me to quilt it, but it was going to be mine. So I was very touched by that. So the nice thing is that it will have two really special people to me, basically in the quilt. But I think she wanted me to custom quilt this particular quilt. And I did look at that for several days, going over the design of the quilt, trying to see how that might play out. Um, but the thing I kept coming back to was I just couldn't see where custom quilting it would really show up in consideration to how much time it would take to custom quilt it. I don't do a whole lot of custom quilting, so uh, I'm not as efficient. I know some people might be able to whip a custom quilt out in several days. Usually when I do something, it takes more like 10 days to 14 days or something. So I just don't have 14 days right now to dedicate to being in here just working on the machine, because I still have so many projects both at this house and at the other house, remodeling things to be doing. I still have 4 open permits. Uh, I still have things. I mean, I don't have the time. So uh, I ended up, after spending 2 or 3 days drawing, I just looked at the IQ, and in a matter of just a few minutes, maybe 5 or 6 minutes, I found what I thought is a really beautiful quilting pattern. It's called Bountiful Feathers. And what was really special about this particular panto was that it's really non-directional. I looked at it on the IQ, both loading the quilt horizontally and vertically. And once you get the pattern on there, the pattern looks exactly the same, regardless of which way you load the quilt. And because the quilt was much longer than it is wide, if I loaded the quilt up on the horizon horizontally, it saves me like 3 or 4 rows of quilting. And rolling up takes more time than the machine takes to quilt a 1 row across. So that was a big time saver there also. So I'm going to take you over and let you see um, what I'm talking about on the quilt. It does have 2 stars. I call them Ohio stars, one in red and one in green. And I will tell you that I think if I had outlined the stars, the green one might have shown up a little bit more. But again, I just don't know if it would have made enough of a difference to justify all of the time. And I don't always think everything has to jump out. Sometimes I like things to be a little bit fuzzy as far as value. Um, and it's a really, really beautiful quilt. It's very sentimental, uh, and it just turned out really spectacular. The thing that I always amazed about with fabric, in some cases, it's not always true. Sometimes fabric looks dated right away. But these hearts, these Hoffman hearts, and with the fabric that she blended with it, I don't think there's anything dated to me about the way it looks at all. And, you know, I've been up here almost 20 years now. Um, so I know that they are 20 years old. And they're probably older than that because I know I didn't get them just before I moved up here. So to have 20-year-old fabric, I mean, not all fabric held up that well. Not all 20-year-old fabric still looks, you know, fresh and new, and you know, some of it pretty dated. But anyway, I'm going to go and move the camera so we can see the quilt on the frame. It's already loaded, and we'll show you just a little bit of the stitching, and then I'll show you the finished outcome. I have it off the quilt and trimmed. I will tell you, you'll see more of the quilting design on the back than you will on the front, because the front of the quilt has so much pattern in the fabric that the quilting doesn't show up that much. And that's again why I didn't want to spend a lot of time custom quilting it. You do see it on the back, but in my case, the back will always be laying on the bed. The front will be facing up. So I just didn't see the point of doing a lot of custom quilting when you're not going to see it. So let's go ahead and get over to the machine and we'll see how that works. As you can see on this quilt, we could outline the star. Here's the green star, and we could quilt in the ditch there and then do the center square. Then we could do the same on the red star, do the ditch, and then we could also do the ditch around the red star. Then we could come in and do the inside of the square in the ditch. Then we could do a ditch around the heart, and then do some feathers around the heart also. Then it gets a little bit more complicated. We could do a little loop-to-loop in this alternating 4-patch. I looked to see if we had any digital pattern that could work in the 4 corners of the star, but we didn't have anything quite that small. So I did want to just leave it blank, and I couldn't really come up with anything that I liked that wouldn't distract from the star block or the heart. So then I continued to look at different things. Again, I kept coming back to outlining the star just to make that pop out a little bit more. But ultimately, I just didn't think that all of the work was going to really pay off. I really thought that there was an opportunity cost to spending 2 weeks on this when I could, for the same 2 weeks, have finished 10 or 12 quilts using the IntelliQuilter. So what I did was pull up the quilting pattern, Bountiful Feathers, and I did it twice on the computer, both vertically and horizontally, to see how that would play out, and the design looked the same either way. It's not a directional pattern, and it looked beautiful both ways. So I loaded the quilt the long ways on the horizontally on the long bars, so that I would reduce the amount of roll-ups that I would have to do by 3. So the quilting time was the same because the square inches is the same, but I had to do 3 less roll-ups, and the rolling up takes some time. Also, the amount of time that the digital pattern is sewing out is time that I could be working around the studio, packing things up, putting things in order, sorting stuff out, and so that was also helpful time that I could use. So I really thought that was the best way to go overall, and I think you'll see in the end that even with the Bountiful Feathers, you aren't going to see a lot of the pattern on the front because there's so much design in the fabric. I used a cream colored isocord thread, 40 weight, and it's the same weight on the back. The thread on the bobbin and the top are exactly the same. And you'll see when the quilt is finished that you really only see the pattern on the back. You don't really see it that much on the front. But it really is beautiful when you see the back of it. As you can see from the back, the pattern really shows up best here. The Bountiful Feathers is beautiful whether you're looking side to side or top to bottom, and it really shows off. Now I do have double batting here. I have 100% cotton on the bottom, and I have 100% wool batting on the top. And when I go ahead and show you the front of the quilt, you can see there is some texture on the quilt. It is a beautiful quilt, but you can't quite see the pattern quite as much. I did use a low contrast thread But again, the quilting doesn't show up as much. And I still don't think that custom quilting would have made a huge difference here for the time allotment. Now, I'm sure that there's some people that say that custom quilting really would have made this pop, but I just don't know that the time allowance, the opportunity cost of doing that would have made sense for what's going on in my life right now. But I know that I'm going to enjoy it no less uh, for it being IntelliQuilted than I am if it were custom quilted right now, especially since I would have had to do both. So I'm really happy with the outcome, and I'm just looking forward to getting it finished. She's going to put the binding on it. She already has it ready for me. And so I can just bring it home once she's done that and get it on the bed. So thanks for stopping by. Until next time, keep piecing it together.